Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Brax, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. On this episode, I spoke to Melo Calarco, who's a published author, mindfulness and performance coach, keynote speaker, and corporate programs facilitator. I had him early on the Move Your Mind podcast, and it was fantastic to catch up for a second interview, learn about what he's been doing, and get a whole range of insights, especially around burnout. So his book has just come out. I highly recommend having a listen or a read of it. You can find all of the links in the show notes, and thanks again for listening to Move Your Mind. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to nickbrax.com/book to purchase the Move Your Mind book, or you can join the Move Your Mind community at moveyourmind.me. Thanks to Melo Calarco for joining me today for Move Your Mind. If you'd like to learn more, you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbrax.com/book, or you can join the Move Your Mind community at moveyourmind.me. Melo, great to see you, mate, and thank you for making the time to come on here. We were just talking before we started that you were probably in the top first 5 of the podcasts I recorded, so it's great to be able to sort of a year and a half, 2 years later do a follow-up. It's insane how quickly the time goes.
Yeah, great to see you again too, Nick, and good to be back again. Yeah, you're right. I think we were one of the first 5 when we weren't still playing with audio quality and all those sort of things back then. So good to be back again. Great to see you.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much has happened since then. I mean, you've released a book, which we're going to talk about, and it's just crazy. Like, time seems to just go faster each year, and it's hard to keep up. But I always love being able to, outside of obviously interviewing you, just check in with you. And, I think over the years we've been able to have that kind of relationship where we've followed each other's work and been able to check in on what each other are doing. And, it's great. It's just interesting to sort of see where we both go with our careers and all the different events that happen in between.
Yeah, so I think we're on a similar mission in the way to support mental health and help as many people as possible. So it's great that we constantly meet each other for these parallel paths here. I know you come to Australia and then you're back in Vancouver and then back in New York, and I'm moving around the place. So it's always good that we reconnect and keep spreading the message. And right now I'm on a huge mission right now to help as many people as possible to beat burnout. I think the last time we spoke was sort of around the pandemic time. So that was pretty raw and pretty fresh right then. But now, post-pandemic, after the pandemic, we're sort of coming out the other end. Burnout incidences are on the rise, and I just want to help as many people as I can. So I'm on a huge mission right now to help people beat burnout and find balance in their life again, or reclaim balance.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think you did touch on it a little bit last time, but I think since we last spoke, it's only become a bigger issue. And, burnout, I think unless people learn to take responsibility and, take these matters into their own hands, it's going to be really tough to combat these kind of things with the world we live in now. It's just, everything's 24/7. How do you switch off? I find it difficult, and I'm, talking about this stuff and, relatively aware of it, but it's hard, it's never ending. So I think it's super important. Have you seen it becoming a bigger problem over the last period?
Hugely so, yeah. So part of it is the post-pandemic. There was that fatigue that came out of that. So people were tired mentally, physically, emotionally. So that's a very big contributing factor. And most companies that I work with, when I look around the room, I go run a corporate seminar, for example, and I look around and I think, geez, most people just look exhausted. They're tired. They're burnt out. They're exhausted. They're depleted. And a lot of it is from, what we've gone through over the last couple of years. But also, like you said, you're right. We're just always on. This unrelenting pace that life moves at, always on mentality, always accessible. People expect an answer or a response within seconds of writing you an email or a text. And there has to be a cost to that. There has to be an outcome to that. And I do see it a lot, actually. And I've seen more burnout now in these last couple of years than I have in the last 20 years of me working in this field. These last 2 years, and actually even research is showing it. It's nearly 1 in 3 globally are burning out. Research from Microsoft, they researched a whole lot of countries, and on average it's 1 in 4, but many countries are 1 in 3 people burning out. That's huge.
Wow. And you're talking 1 in 3 just across the board, or is this in
Yes,
specific industries or companies? This is across the board.
across the board. Yeah, across the board. And
Wow.
it is more susceptible in certain industries, as you know, like healthcare industries and medical professionals, teachers. So there are industries that are more specific, but generally across the board now, 1 in 3 people are burning out. So that's huge if you think about the massive
Jeez.
numbers of that. Yeah. During the pandemic, I supported about 75,000 people in my seminars and workshops, and did a lot of virtual things around the globe. And after I finished that, I thought, you know what, I want to help more people. I could help as many people as possible. So that's where the idea of the book came out there, because I see the rise of it in every industry, and I see the people around us. You don't have to look far. I mean, these statistics aside, just look around you. I'm sure a lot of people around you are tired, exhausted, and maybe even yourself a little bit. So whatever I can do to help that, is what I'm on a mission to do right now.
Yeah, and I want to go into the book properly in a second, but it is, it's something that affects me. It affects everyone you come in contact with, and you just notice that even when people are not working, they seem to have a lot of difficulty not being busy, or just not filling their time with being preoccupied. And even when I was back with the family over Christmas, and even just noticing them in their downtime, my mum and dad, who are, very fit and active for their age, but in their downtime, it's just filled with thing after thing after thing. And I was like, gee, and all their friends the same thing. I was like, these guys are like in their late 60s and they're running. I mean, great that they've got the energy, but I was just like, how the hell do you fill your time every minute's, occupied with something? And
Yeah.
it seems pretty common where we just don't even give ourselves permission to have that downtime.
Most people won't. I'm amazed you even said the word downtime, because it's not in people's vocabulary these days. They just don't allow themselves to stop. People don't give themselves permission to stop. And then when they do stop, let's say they have a break, they're at lunch, they're having a break, or at work, and their little lunch break, the first thing they do is get their telephone out and start scrolling and start looking at things and filling up their downtime with more stimulation. And because we have our laptops on us all the time, because we have our telephones on us all the time, we have our emails on all the time, we are always on. I had one particular client who he runs like multiple businesses, multi-millionaire guy, works across the globe, works across multiple time zones, and he was quite proud of his always on. He's like, I did an all-nighter last night, Melo. I stayed up all night and I worked, and then I worked in the Qantas lounge, and then I worked on the aeroplane, and then I worked, when I got to the UK, so he worked across the UK, the US, and Australia, so 3 different time zones. And he was very proud of it. Like, I've got this energy. He's also in his mid-50s, but his body said, no more. I ain't doing this anymore. That's enough. And his body stopped producing hormones, actually stopped producing testosterone. His liver was shutting down. His internal organs were shutting down. And he eventually ended up in intensive care for months on end, actually. So,
Jeez.
but people think mentally they can keep going, but physically we just cannot. There's a price to pay for that. I mean, that's an extreme version of burnout. Probably the worst burnout I've seen. It's taken us about 6 months to get back to functional again. So we don't want to end up like that. We want to have mechanisms and tools and techniques that we can actually nip stress in the bud before it turns into this burnout. I know that's an extreme case, but I see a lot of that around us. People just always just going, working till 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, then they can't sleep because they're thinking about work. They wake up, they're not refreshed, and they go to work, and they're just this constant treadmill just keeps going and going.
Oh, and we're not built to be able to push ourselves to that degree. We need rest, we need downtime. Our brains aren't meant to be functioning on that level. It's just not healthy. And you say that's extreme, but I mean, especially living in New York. I mean, I've been there on and off for the last couple of years. I think I've talked to you a little bit about this before, but and you lived there at one point, and I'm sure you saw the same thing. But a lot of my friends there and people I've seen that are in business in those areas, it's that same thing. It's a badge of honor. They're talking about how they work around the clock, they play hard, they party hard, they just do not switch off. And half the time when I've met some of these guys, I'm literally asking them, like, how on earth are you sustaining this? And, they'll have all these, ridiculous answers to it. But the reality is you can't sustain that. It is not possible. And I think whenever someone, something sounds like it's sort of out of the realm of when you think about, okay, that doesn't, I personally just would not be able to handle that. Most people, we've all got the same limitations, to varying degrees. So it's just crazy. You can't sustain it no matter what the result is. It's like, is it really worth it, to push yourself to that level?
No,
so it's just, it's insane.
You can't keep going 24/7. I know New York's the city that never sleeps, and they have, that New York minute. They say in New York you can do as much in a minute than an average person can do in like hours. But there's a price to pay for that, unfortunately. There is, like I said, in an ideal world, we have this periods when we're on and we're, switched on and we're working hard, but also we have to polarize that with some downtime, meditation, or, basically parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system activity so we can have that balance. And the stress response is only designed for short-term stimulus, just to get you through that project or to finish that job or to get that thing done, or fight and flight response. It's not designed to be switched on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without any consequence.
Mm-hmm. And how much of this is when we are pushing ourselves to that level, from what you've seen, is there an improvement in the actual productivity or in the outcome of the task or whatever the job is? Because I know for myself, I've got certain unhealthy things that I'm really conscious of and I'm trying to undo, but they're so ingrained where, for example, it will just be if I've got a bunch of emails and they're not important to reply to, I have to just instantaneously be looking at them, cleaning them up, making sure it's all on track. I can't stop checking it. And a lot of these behaviors that I do, I'm aware as I'm doing them that they're not actually contributing to getting any, better results. It's actually just using more of my brain power. It's probably just burning me out further. And then there's also that thing in my mind when things are going well when I'm on top of work, it's very hard to relax if you've got downtime in a day, because automatically my brain will be thinking, no, if you take time out or if you don't find new things to do or, sit here and think about it, things are going to fall apart, because you just got this thing drummed into you. Society has drummed into us that if we're not grinding all the time, things won't work. And it's tricky. So that's something I'm personally really one of my biggest issues that I want to work on, but I'm interested to see if you've found from, the research you're doing or the work you're doing, what that correlation is between the actual result. Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organization and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbrax.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups. And you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a problem I see all of the time. Most people won't give themselves permission to switch off and stop for 10 minutes. And I try to get it across to them that if you stop for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or even 2 minutes, your next 2 hours will be more productive. So you'll improve your performance. So the short answer to that is basically there is a tipping point when it comes to stress. So there is the right amount of stress that will drive you, motivate you, help you achieve your goals. And then there's a tipping point where that peak performance, and then it wanes down the other side, and then you'll lose performance. So, and they say that window of peak performance is around about 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours. So if you're on a task, you're on a job and you're really focused and you're in there, you're in the zone there and you're thinking, planning, problem solving, using your cognition, they say around about 2 hours is maximum. And then After 2 hours, you'll start losing performance. You'll start, your cognition will start waning. So whatever you can do to work in periods of like 2 hour sprints, work hard, take a 5-minute break, work hard, take a 5-minute break, because then it turns into, the stress will turn into distress. With distress comes that fatigue, comes that anxiety, comes that overwhelm, comes that burnout feeling. And the end consequence is burnout, basically.
Yeah.
A classic example of someone like that would be a student, university student, let's say. When there's no stress, let's say they've got the exam coming up, there's no stress at all, they're not worried about it at all, they're not even thinking about it. And then there's a little bit of stress starts coming, the deadline starts coming for the exam, so they better start studying. So that's that positive stress that drives you, motivates you, helps you achieve it. And then typically they'll study right through to the night before the exam, and then they'll crash on the other end, basically. So if there's no stress, it's no good, but it's a matter of just finding that right balance. And when it comes to burnout or avoiding burnout in many ways, it's all about, the first step is self-awareness. Understanding, I'm feeling a bit tired now, maybe I need a break. I'm feeling a bit fatigued, maybe I need to go for a walk or have a drink or do some exercise or something like that. So, but unfortunately, we can't change what we don't notice. And we get in this zone, we get in this mode, like you said, emails for 2 hours, and then you go straight into another job, We don't notice that we're just working unrelentlessly, and then our attention will wane and our performance will wane.
It's super interesting.
It's a bell curve, basically. So, no stress, no performance, a bit of stress, the performance rises, but just the right healthy amount of stress, we're at the peak, but then too much stress, it tips over the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a daily balancing act where it's not the kind of thing that you could probably, work out, okay, I've sort of found the right balance with this, and then it's all going to be okay. You've got to be, like anything, working on it every day, monitoring it, having that self-awareness, I would guess.
Yeah, totally. And typically when you're on a big project or you've got a big job to do, the first thing you do is let go of the things that you need the most, like your basic self-care. I'm too busy now, I won't have a break. I'm too busy now, I won't stop for lunch. I've got so much to do, I won't go to the gym tonight, or I've got too much exercise. But it's usually the opposite thing that we need. We need to keep up our routines and our habits and our rituals so we can keep up our performance. And that's when you said over the course of a week, check in on yourself. Am I doing enough exercise? Am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? Am I taking renewal breaks? So then your performance can be steady all the way through the week instead of these peaks and troughs all the way through. So, very important to, very, very well about habits and rituals. Without them, we just get into the grind and we forget about looking after ourselves.
Yeah, which that pretty much answers my next question, which was for anyone listening to this, what are some things that they can do? Would that be one of the main things? Which, like you're saying, I'm a huge believer in habits and rituals, and I think it's just, probably the most important thing. But would you say that's one of the main things you'd recommend, creating those habits?
For me, when it comes to like preventing burnout and optimizing your health and your performance, there's three main factors that come into play. The first one, like I said, is self-awareness, like being aware when you are burning out a little bit, being aware when you are tired, being aware of your energy fluctuations throughout the day. Are you more energized in the morning? If so, then do your hardest tasks in the morning. Do your cognitive tasks first up when you're fresh. Maybe you need an afternoon break. So that the first step is self-awareness, just being more aware of your energy and how it fluctuates and how you can take some control over that. The second step is then self-regulation. So being able to regulate in certain circumstances. I teach to a lot of my clients, and you may have heard this too, the 90-second breath break. Just stopping for 90 seconds and doing some breath work and getting out of that reactive state of fight and flight response where the amygdala is fired up, and just initiating the relaxation response constantly. So developing the ability to self-regulate is super important. And self-regulation can also be like prioritizing your workload. Like, what do I need to do today? What do I not need to do today? What's my not to do list? So another version of self-regulation could be, you finish work at the end of your work day, and as you drive home, you're winding down with some music. And then as you get home, you sit in your car for a few minutes before you enter your home with your busy household of kids and things like that. So So self-regulate, or developing the ability to self-regulate, is the next step. So first step is self-awareness. Second step is the ability to self-regulate, and that can be through meditation, through downtime, and all these other practices. And then the last one is what we're talking about there, is self-care. Making sure that you are diligent with your self-care practices. Make them not negotiable. Like it's not like I do them on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's like every day. Every day you go for a walk. Every day you do your meditation. Every day you eat well. Every night you go to bed at a certain time to sleep well. So, and it's consistent self-care. That's the key. Because when it comes to burnout, from what I've seen in the work that I do, burnout usually comes from a cumulative effect of lack of self-care. So basically letting go of all the practices that serve you well, we slowly let go. And because we get busier at work, one of the first steps to burnout is actually working too hard and letting everything else go, trying to improve your performance. So then to reverse that equation is like have consistent self-care every single day. I think I mentioned before on the previous podcast, my morning habits and rituals are not negotiable. I start my day with a morning walk. It's not a run or anything brisk, just a nice morning walk to get that serotonin production, boost my energy, get out in the sunlight, nice and quick. And then after my walk, I do a meditation practice, usually about a 20-minute meditation practice. And then after that, I have a healthy breakfast. So 3 wins before the day's even started. That's just for me. That fills my cup up, that makes me feel good. So then I can serve and work better and coach better and run seminars and workshops. And that's not negotiable. I also end my day I bookend my day with another practice at the end of my day to close my work day, so I can switch off and then go hang out with the kids and my family and take the dog for a walk and all those sort of things. So these self-care habits are just not negotiable for me.
Yeah, no, I love what you're talking about there and totally agree. And, same for me. It's sort of non-negotiable that every morning I get up and do 30 minutes of cardio and then meditate and then do, the same thing at the end of the day, have a different ritual. And it's night and day what difference it makes. And it just, you sort of feel so much more centered. You feel like even if things do not go to plan, you've got that routine there to keep you in place and keep you in check. And I think, the stuff you're talking about here, people would feel like if they're trying to grind and put these different things off to get better results, that, taking a step back and trying to have more balance will slow you down. But ironically, it actually leads to better results longer term, because it's the same thing with trying to get success in any field of work. It's not really about how much can you do in one day or 1 week. It's about how consistently can you show up and do the right things. And, if you do that for long enough, then it gains momentum and it's like a snowball effect. So it's just, it's such an important thing.
Yeah, that's right. Last year I was coaching an Olympic athlete actually for the 2022, 21 Olympics, whatever they were, the Tokyo ones that got cancelled. And she was a perfect example of someone that is a high performer, doing high performance in their sport, but also understood the need or the necessity of having renewal breaks, regular renewal breaks, having a rest, so that they do their sport in the morning, go to the track and train or whatever it is that their sport is, but then they have a renewal break. Then they eat well. I mean, she ate amazingly well. Her nutrition was amazing, and then more renewal breaks. So it's about just finding that balance. Like we said, we're not machines. We cannot be on 24 hours a day without any consequence. But if we can find that balance where we do periods of peak performance and hard work and, doing that productivity or whatever it is that we're doing our work, and then we bookend that with a bit of relaxation, meditation, downtime, even if it's 2 minutes, it doesn't matter. It just takes you out of that reactive mode. And then you do those sort of practices on top, and then we can keep that's sustainable. That's very sustainable.
And I love that. So tell me about your book. You've been talking about this for a while. It sounds incredible, and I've been lucky enough to sort of hear a little bit about your journey with it. So can you give us a bit more on that and what's happening with it?
Yeah, sure. It's so exciting, and as you know, you wrote a book yourself, and it's all consuming. Like when you're in there, it all happened quite quickly. Actually, the publisher picked up my concept pretty quickly, and gave me a very short deadline to actually write the book. It was only, I think, 9 weeks in total to write 58,000 words or something like that. So it was pretty tough writing it, getting it all together. Luckily, my family were overseas at the time. They were in Switzerland and there, so I could actually just hang out with the dog, light the fire, and just write away. So all those months of work, I physically have a copy in my hand right now, which is pretty exciting. Beating burnout, finding balance. So the idea of it, the concept of it is basically, as you know, I cycled around the world on my mountain bike. And had all sorts of crazy adventures along the way. So typically it's 9 chapters in the book, and each chapter has a story. So a story from my travels, for example. It might be when I had a machine gun in my ribs in Rwanda, or the gorillas in Uganda, or some treks in the Himalaya. And typically it's the lessons that I learned on those travels, and some of those lessons were pretty tough lessons around trust or resilience or rising above it. So the lesson that I learned from that, and then I translate that into a lesson or a learning for the reader, so then they can actually learn some concepts around mindfulness and a whole range of concepts that goes with that chapter. And then there's also stories and other people, including yourself, you are in the book there. So I interviewed a lot of CEOs, I interviewed a lot of high performers and high achievers, and they're in the book there. So it's also their story too, and their concepts, and I felt that really helped. And one thing that blew me away when I started interviewing people, I interviewed close to 200 people that had burnt out actually, and 90% of the people that I interviewed didn't realize they were burning out until it was too late. So they actually
wow.
And then they had something like a panic attack or some sort of crisis point or a medical condition. Like I said, that person that stopped producing hormones. So that actually blew me away a fair bit. Like the other 10%, so the 90% didn't realize they were burning out. The other 10% was divided into 2. One was they knew they were working hard and they felt the stress and they felt the tension, but they just didn't know what to do about it. They didn't have the tools or techniques. And the other 5%, they knew they were working at this unrelenting pace, but they just kept going. They ignored the signs. So
right.
Just totally. So I thought, so I'm speaking to all these people in this book here to get it across there. So basically, in short, it's 9 chapters, very implementable practices. So at the end of each chapter, there's a little home practice that you can take home and you can practice, and hopefully that'll benefit you to either beat burnout, prevent it. And by the way, you don't need to be burnt out to read it. You don't need to experience burnout. You can read it because you'll also see that the subheading for it is mindful lessons for a meaningful life. So it's also about finding passion, finding purpose, finding mission, sort of introspecting and reflecting a fair bit. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. A lot of hard work went into it, and I just want to get it out to the world to help as many people as possible. And my biggest dream or my biggest aspiration is if somebody picks up the book and they take on one concept and just practice it and do it, and it helps them and creates this ripple effect. That's all I want, really, if they can take that home and actually learn that. Because often when I run seminars and workshops, people come to me years later or months later and say, hey, Melo, that lunch and learn you did at XYZ company, it saved my marriage, or it helped me through cancer, or it helped me reconnect with my children. So, that's my big dream. If someone can take this book away, pick up one concept or 2 concepts or practices, run with it, and it can help them for the rest of their life.
I love that. And I think it's such I love everything you're doing because it's from the right place. It's genuine. You've got an amazing story, obviously. And, like you're saying, I think your sort of reason for doing it and the way that you're trying to get your work out there to people is coming from the right place. Because a lot of people go and say they're going to change the world and they're going to, listen to my 6-step process and do this or do that. But you've just been doing the work. You've got your own story. You're out there on the ground getting results, and you're not doing it because it's about you. You're doing it because you genuinely want to help. And like you're saying with, that message in the book of if someone can pick it up and just take one thing out of it, that's a win, which I think that's huge. It's so important. So no, I think it's incredible. And so, thank you for including me in the book as well. And, very excited to have a read of it. The 10-year anniversary of Underbrax, and we've relaunched with the classic white pear. We've also got new styles coming out super soon. We're donating $1 from every pair to mental health, currently to 1 in 5. You can find all of this at www.underbrax.com.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be coming out there. So it's released in March the 1st. It's actually up for pre-sale right now, so you can buy it on Amazon. I can share the links with you.
Yep.
Yeah, 1st of March is coming out. And also, as I was mentioning before, I'm in the studio now recording the audiobook version, which is quite exciting, quite challenging, I must say. Swallowing my words, I can't speak of a day, but it's another version, or it's another way that people can actually digest the information, so it could help as many people as possible. Is really my biggest goal. Is to, like I said, I'm on a mission to help people, beat burnout and find balance. And if I can help some people, and then they spread it on, and actually probably my biggest vision out of this, the selfish part of it actually is, if I can make the world a better place for my children, for other people, that's what I'm hoping this book is. So I'd love to. It might sound cliche, and you've probably heard these sayings before, but if I can leave this world a better place than the way that I found it, I've done my job.
Totally.
And, hopefully this book can actually, do that, serve that purpose.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great reason to be doing it. So like you were saying, people, the audiobook's coming out as well, and March 1st, and where do they go to find it? We'll put all of the links there, but they can go to Amazon, different sites, I guess, to find it.
Amazon, Booktopia. It'll be on all the regular book sites. Typically, it's getting out and released in bookstores as I speak now. Like the Dimmicks shop will have it here in Australia. A lot of the airports will be stocking it. So I'm sure you can find it. But typically, Amazon is probably a good place to start there. And so share the links. That'll be fantastic. So if we can spread that mission, it'll be awesome. I'll tell you what really was. You might have gone through this process yourself when I was writing the book. So I was commissioned to write 55,000 words, and I ended up getting so into the process, and especially because my family was away and I was sitting by the fireside with my dog and my cat by my side, I ended up writing 70,000 words.
Oh, wow.
And then the publisher said, actually, you have to cull 10,000 words. And I said, oh, my God, how am I going to do that? Because it came from the heart. And ironically, I had to cull a whole chapter in the end. I had to get rid of a whole chapter, 10,000 words. And ironically, it was on the topic of acceptance. So I had to accept the fact that 10,000 words. And the book is probably better for it because, especially if someone is experiencing burnout or struggling with anxiety or anything like that, you don't want this big chunky book that is too hard to ingest. So I think it's a nice size. It's, lots of very practical tips, and it's a lot of space in there. So it's actually, I think it did serve the purpose well, but man, it was hard to get rid of 10,000 words. It was so hard to let go of, but I guess it was part of the teaching that I do. You have to learn to let go. So, it was an interesting process to go through. And I was mentioning to you before we jumped on live that, towards the end of the book, as I was writing the final chapters, unfortunately in my life, I had some, personal things where I lost a good friend, I lost my father, and, having that drive and motivation just to keep going and to keep pushing and have that deadline actually helped me in a way. Helped me just to keep that motivation going because, two people very dear to me in my life were taken from me on those final steps. But also, one of the chapters in the book is all about perseverance and purpose. So it really helped me to find that purpose, and to persevere no matter what life throws at you. So it's one of the big chapters in the book there. So it actually helped me write that chapter. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's crazy all the, just how all of these things come together. And like you're saying, I definitely had that same experience where it was next to impossible to try and cut stuff out because you sort of don't, when it's your own thing and you're so close to it, it's so hard to know what to and to not get rid of. And, how do you remove yourself and not have that attachment? But, that's the other thing I was going to say when you were describing the book. It's similar to sort of what I tried to do with mine. I think I love the fact that you've got the combination of, your story and, that really engaging side to it by the sound of it, combined with here's some really practical things you can do. Here's some lessons from different experts, from different people that have been through different things, and, combining those two things and making it not too overwhelming, having, not over bombarding them with content. I think it just makes it so much more practical and usable, which yeah, I think that's a really important thing to do.
I agree. Because
Yeah.
on that topic also, sometimes some of these books, some of these self-help books that I pick up, they can be so boring, like so. I'm into mindfulness and I'm into self-help, but they can be so like disengaging because there's no stories in there. It's just like facts and concepts and models and things like that. So and I'm someone that's into those sort of things, and I get bored. So framing the book with personal stories and personal anecdotes and personal experiences, I think really helps to get the message across in a unique way, because they're my unique stories. Your stories are unique to you, and we share them in a different way, but they come from the heart, they come from experience, they come from a good place. So, I feel that it's a much more pleasant journey for the reader to go through than just facts and figures and data and research, all those sort of things. So,
it really is, yeah. No, it really is, mate. And and another just final thing, interesting parallel from what you were saying, I just thought of then as you were saying it, but it's sort of, you were saying with, you lost your father, your best friend last year, around the time you were putting the book together. It's sort of similar to me when I was back during COVID putting this book together. My aunt and uncle both passed away in that same year, and they were the two closest people in the world to me. And it was this crazy process of sort of going through grieving them, including them in the actual book in the end, and having added that extra meaning and just that whole process. But just interesting, the parallels of, what we've both probably gone through with that experience of writing a book and the events that happened. So anyway, just came to mind as you were saying it.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember when you mentioned your uncle. Yeah, your uncle passed away towards the end of that book there. So it just adds more depth and meaning, I think, to the book and the purpose and the mission behind it in many ways. And they're there watching us, and they're there supporting us and cheering us on too at the same time. I think it makes it even more special.
It does, mate. It really does. So, no, thank you for making the time to come on, and congratulations again on the book. And for anyone listening, we'll have all of the links to purchase the book or the audiobook in the show notes, and make sure you do, because we'll be very, knowing your work, I know that it is going to be super valuable. So anyone listening, please make sure you do go and purchase the book and check it out. And thank you again, mate, for coming on. It's always so great to connect.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, showing up here and listening. Hopefully taking a few tips out of this to help you beat burnout and find balance.
Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks to Melo Calarco for joining me today for Move Your Mind. If you'd like to learn more, you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbrax.com/book, or you can join the Move Your Mind community at moveyourmind.me.